Freshly pressed on Smooth 98.1.
Studio Max are up. A very good morning to you, and thank you for sticking with us here at Smooth 98.1, Smooth Breakfast with Valentine Ohu.
And Ayo Mairo Ese. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Join the conversation this Christmas Eve by sending messages to WhatsApp 0809 444 0981 and on Twitter.
At Smooth 981 FM, use the hashtag FRESHLYPRESSED981. On YouTube, we're streaming live, so please go on there. YouTube is YouTube.com/Smooth981.
Yes, youtube.com/News981 FM. And this morning, was very grateful to have Folu Storms in the studio.
Good morning, Lagos. It's nice to be here.
Good morning. And Justin EJ. Hi, Justin.
Merry Christmas, Val. Merry Christmas, Lagos.
Merry Christmas, Folu.
Merry Christmas.
I don't understand. Is it that you are ungrateful to have me? You said you are
I
grateful to
don't
have me.
understand. What did I do? Merry Christmas, everyone.
Oh, boy. All right, so join the conversation as we start with the first story from Daily Time.
All right, so Justin, I'll come to you for the first story. So
Gratefully,
I'm paying your
please.
attention. Yeah,
Yes.
gratefully.
Yes.
So the chairman of the Governors Forum, Nigeria's Governors Forum, Kaide Fayemi, who's the governor of Ekiti State, says a review of the revenue sharing formula is still the position of the governors to enable them implement the new national minimum wage without hitches. Now, in other newspaper reports, we have reports that he said that none of the governors in the state would pay below 30,000 naira, which is the stipulated national minimum wage. We've also talked about the affordability of this by different states and how sustainable this is. Justin, please take us to this story from the Daily Times.
Well, it's same old. There's not much of a story here. It's the normal sound bites that we've been hearing since the whole argument about minimum wage came up. So Fayemi is holding brief for the Governors Forum, and they had a meeting, and even though he's saying, oh, none of the governors will pay below minimum wage, the governors are saying, actually, if we do not review the revenue sharing formula with the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission, it will be difficult or nigh impossible for us to pay the minimum wage. So this just underscores for us the fact that a lot of our states are actually not viable economically, because in a situation where the available amount of money to be shared in the first place by the federal government to the states and other parastatals, which is largely driven by oil-based revenue, is dwindling, right?
Yeah.
Nobody is having a serious conversation about how to diversify revenue base at state level.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about minimum wage, and they're hanging it all at the doorstep of, if we do not increase minimum wage, we will not be able to do this. Mind you, there is a difference, like Fayemi pointed out in the article. There is a difference between the federal government saying this is the minimum wage and the consequential adjustments that need to happen, because the minimum wage is at the bottom level of the rankings, right?
Yeah.
So as you go up the hierarchy in the service, in the public service, as it were, which is what concerns the states, you would then have to adjust people's pre-existing salaries before that minimum base was established to reflect the new changes. Now, there's a different negotiation. They've agreed a percentage of how that will be done. But at the end of the day, everybody is saying, listen, if you don't give us more money from the centrally available revenue, then we won't have money to pay minimum wage. I just think that the workers are going to get the short end of the stick at the end of all this back and forth.
Yeah. Let me talk about something else that we've highlighted. I think it was this week or late last week. Yes, we talk about the revenue sharing formula. How about internally generated revenue? So the governors have been accused at times of not being creative when it comes to being lazy, if I can use that word loosely, for not being proactive in trying to make their states generate their own income, and so they go cap in hand to the center to receive money. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's a general malaise that we are afflicted with in the country. And it's mainly because of the way revenue sharing is structured. It's a party every month end in Abuja, right? There's not a lot of incentive. Combine that with the fact that really our electoral system is such that the people are not actually able to hold their elected representatives accountable. So when you're not accountable to anybody, number one. Number two, you have access to free money from the center. There's little incentive to actually buckle down and do some hard work, and that's what has happened over time. So IGR for a whole lot of the states is non-existent. I mean, taxation, which is the base of IGR, is a social contract. If you do not give the people the basis or the need or the basis rather for wanting to pay tax, there's not a lot that you can get out of it. So yeah.
Thank you very much, Justin. Olu, I'll come to you for the next story from Premium Times. Presidency insists Buhari has no third-term plans. Yesterday, we took comments from the spokesperson to the president, Garba Shehu. He spoke to journalists. I think he's really been vocal at this time, which we've called for in terms of communication. Today's story is that he's saying that, and I'll read a quote from him, that all the claims that have been made to suggest that President Buhari is seeking a second term is
Third term
is false. What do you have to say about this? I mean, can you please take us through the story?
Essentially, when I saw the headline, I remember I actually asked downstairs. I said, Justin, what's this news about the president possibly looking for a third term? I'd caught no wind of this before. I didn't know that it was a conversation that was happening. Some people feel that perhaps this is almost like self-sponsored news to sort of put them in the news, but that confuses me because I don't understand what the purpose of that would be. Now, Garba Shehu apparently is responding directly to an accusation or a claim made by human rights lawyer Femi Falana, who had said that what the president is doing at the moment by infringing on a number of rights, and we know that this administration has been accused of grossly violating individual rights, is saying that they're sort of preparing the groundwork for 2023 and they're clearing the way. Now, Garba Shehu is very clear to say that, listen, there is the President Buhari intends to serve his full second elected term in office ending 2023, and there will be a general election after that in which he will not be a candidate. There isn't even the faintest possibility. Remember as well that there was a previous incumbent president that attempted to alter the constitution. That was unconstitutional. It was rightly rebuffed, and just really repeating that it's not going to happen. I don't even think that it would be a practical thing at all. We know that his health has not been the best. We know that he is getting on there in years. I don't know if it would be feasible to even think he could survive politically. I think that sort of stuff. Truth is stranger than fiction.
Happen,
but I think by and large, no one really expected that there would be sort of a third-term movement, and so it's just been clearly debunked, and I have no reason to think otherwise.
Exactly. Thank you very much. And he said that it will continue, that he will not make any more statements on this or not say anything else on this, except to just emphasize or repeat what's been already said. President Muhammadu Buhari is not seeking a third term, just to make it louder so people at the back can hear. We have some comments here from WhatsApp.
Yes, Prince says some of these governors are just lazy. About 4 states have started paying minimum wage, Lagos included. Non all states like Kaduna as well. Ifeanyi Kolisa says the state governments are not creative because of the feeding bottle federalism we're currently operating.
All right, let's move on to our next story, Justin. No date yet for border reopening, says the federal government. This story is from the Punch newspaper. Earlier in August, the federal government had closed its borders, its land borders, to neighboring countries in an exercise codenamed Operation Exercise Swift Response. They said they're going to, it was for a short period of time. Towards the end of this year, they came out to say that, well, it wouldn't be reopened until January 2020. Please, Justin, take us through. It's a short story from the Punch newspaper, but it's just letting us know that there's no date in sight. And do you think there might be a postponement?
Well, who names these programs? You know, if it's not the Safari, Operation Tiger Smile, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Smile guys with their van had the crocodile on it. I was like, wow,
Were you starstruck?
A little bit.
I mean, the names get me. Operation Exercise Swift Response, all in one sentence. A mouthful, but okay. So, Minister of State for Industry, Trade and Investment, Miriam Katagum, was the one who made some of these statements that the article is quoting, and she's basically clearing the air on or setting expectations for when the border closure will be done away with. And she's saying that the government is in negotiations with Benin Republic and Niger Republic. So a whole part of the motivation for the administration doing what they did was what they, in other news items I've read, they've referred to as economic sabotage coming from our neighboring countries, who basically opened up their borders to items that Nigeria had placed restrictions on for import, and then basically ship them into Nigeria through the land borders. So they are a major part of the reason why the borders were closed. Now, the government had previously said that until they play nice, we will keep those borders closed. So I guess we will get to know when that eventually happens based on the meetings that are currently being had. It's a very lengthy conversation, and I think a whole lot of stakeholder groups are being pulled into the sitting room to, or rather pulled to the negotiation table to talk about things. The customs is there, the Air Force is there, security agents are there, and they are contemplating joint border patrols and all of that. They've also talked about okay, so this segues into another article I think we're going to look at. The next story.
Because
So
I'd like to put that side by side.
Mhm.
It almost seems like an oxymoron, but I mean, or seems a bit like an oxymoron. But before we go to the next story, Justin, yesterday, the Speaker of the House, Mr. Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, in his constituency, Surulere, had said that the government had recorded, a lot of success with the border closure. One of which was that rice farmers were smiling. These were his words. Were smiling to the bank. We had more people buying local rice, and so it was benefiting the Nigerian economy. Do you think that based on the assertions by the federal government, not just him, a number of people from the federal government have said, "Oh, this is a good move. We've seen, farmers are now happy, they're happier." What do you think about that? Do you think it is enough reason to keep our borders closed?
what I can say about policy making is some of the mission critical considerations are timing, context.
Yeah.
Almost nothing in and of itself in policy making is bad. It's all about timing and context and some other considerations. Now, protectionism, which is what we've resorted to, is good when you've done some homework. When, for instance, the farm to market network, the farm to market value chain has been taken care of. I don't know how farmers are smiling when they have crops rotten in the farm because they can't move them out to market. I don't know how farmers are smiling when you've not organized buying houses to take care of the farmer's upfront investment without having to wait for the market to turn and for him to close his cash cycle. So there's a whole lot that we do that we don't think through before we do them. So
I mean, but arguably, Justin, can we arguably say that these are wicked problems? And we know that our problems are not simple ones; they're not easy ones to fix. So, looking at perhaps where a lot of the rural farmers would have been prior to some of the more protectionist policies that we have now, perhaps that's why they're smiling a bit more. So we haven't got definitely to where we need to get to, because like you said, there's still a lot of waste. We know that we lose a lot of products along the way.
Waste, yeah.
But there is at least a sense of trying to move in a direction to help the growers, to help the farmers. So the farmers may be in the better position now, but the truth is the Nigerian people as a whole are still going to feel the pain of this of these actions, because the networks are not strong yet enough to support moving the goods to where they need to go in a timely fashion.
I agree with you, Full. I agree with you. I mean, just to round that up, I would say I wish there would be a bit more nuance in some of the policy positions. You don't use a sledgehammer to kill a fly. And my people have a saying, there's certain parts of the body where a fly perches and you just pretend the fly is not there.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
All right, Chika says, I think it's reckless to make a policy for a few to the detriment of the majority. And Yinka says, I wonder why the federal government has been flexing muscles with the likes of Benin Republic and Co., where the main problem lies up north. How do we explain the recent attack on Yobe that shares borders with Niger and Chad? Are these borders really closed, except we're saying Boko Haram resides in Yobe State?
Apples and oranges.
All right, thank you very much. Now, another aspect to the border closure that some people have also talked about is international relations. So in terms of the fact that we're signed to the ECOWAS agreement, and recently we signed the African Continental Free Trade Agreement for free movement of goods and services across countries in Africa, and what this the implications of the closure of the border is on this. Going to our next story, Justin, federal government has said that the recent visa policy announced by the president will boost investment. Federal government yesterday reiterated that it was working with airport authorities to ensure that the newly announced visa on arrival policy would allow for easier and faster processing of documents of persons and goods to encourage foreign investment.
Okay, so let me put certain things in context here. It's not exactly new. The visa on arrival policy has been in effect for quite a while, almost a year, I think.
Yeah, possibly even 2.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
at
what
least,
do you
at
think?
least a year.
No, I know for ECOWAS, yes, it's been in existence. However, for the wider African countries,
For
Yeah, for in
all
general, based on
incoming
arrival, for at
travelers.
least a year, I think it's been working.
So what you need to do is, it's based on a pre-approval. So you apply online, you get a pre-approval,
yeah,
and based on that pre-approval, you can then process your travel itinerary. And then when you arrive, you pay the visa fee. I actually have a personal friend who came into Nigeria early this year
from what
using
country?
from Spain.
Spain.
Yeah, so using the same, so it's not exactly new, but I think it's attracted some more headlines because Mr. President spoke about it on a trip outside of the country. Now, on the main substance of this story, which is trying to tie it to investment, again, policy positions are neither good nor bad in and of themselves. So it all depends on what we do to attract that investment. The fact that your borders are wide open doesn't, I mean, Eritrea and Somalia could throw their borders wide open, doesn't mean they're going to get an investment going in there, right? Except you're in post-war reconstruction or anything of the sort. So the fact that we have visa on arrival in and of itself does not guarantee any sort of investment. We still need to do the basic stuff. We still need to fix infrastructure. We still need to fix power. We still need to do those things that capital is smart. Money flows to value. As an investor, I'm not just going to walk in because your doors are open. In fact, the fact that your doors are open are going to make me think twice about coming in the front. I mean, what's going on here? Why is the door wide open? Capital is jealous. I don't want a place where there's too much competition. Opening the doors suggests that there's a lot of competition. So that in and of itself, regardless of what Minister Adebayo wants to tell us, is not a silver bullet for attracting investment. The government needs to get down to business and fix the basic stuff that will attract investment.
All right, thank you. One other thing I'd just like to mention very quickly is that the reason I asked what country your friend was coming in from was because I was having a chat with some people over the weekend and they were talking about how tedious it was to get a visa to Nigeria. It wasn't their first, they were coming from the United Kingdom. It wasn't their first time. They'd come a number of times. They actually have an entertainment visa. But they talked about how the process has been.
Are they going through the regular
Yes.
embassy channels?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's the problem with this visa on arrival. It's not been well publicized. I like the fact that it's getting a lot of headlines now, a lot of limelight now. It wasn't very well publicized,
Yes.
really.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If I call this up from IBA says the speaker that's talking about rice farmers smiling to the bank, he's failed to let us know how the government can help these rice farmers to improve the quality of the products, because each time I'm consuming rice, I have my heart in my mouth because of stones and pebbles. More messages from Larry.
It's not new. It was part of the executive order 2 years ago for ease of doing business, says Larry.
That's a visa
That's
on
the
arrival.
visa of an honorable thing.
And Darius says the African Free Trade Agreement only allows free movements of goods and services manufactured in those countries and not goods imported into those countries and transported into Nigeria, and those imported into those countries. Rebranding has locally made. Okay.
Dari,
They
thanks.
got a
I think
mix
I
of
get because of we're talking about the closure of the borders and allowing
Yes.
goods coming. So we understand.
But I get the point he's making.
Yeah.
So he's basically saying the African Free Trade Agreement has specifications that pertain to goods that are manufactured within the zone. So what Niger and our neighbors were doing was importing rice. So one of them, I can't remember which one, became the highest importer of rice from Thailand, right? Meanwhile, it's a country of how many people? So question is, where was that rice going? It was just strolling across the borders. Yeah.
Adefemi says on YouTube, good morning, guys. Kudos to your analysts and compliments of the season to the freshly pressed peace and love. Folu, Vanguard reports that 40% of Nigeria's population lack power supply. My first reaction was it's new.
Yeah, yes.
But then they're giving a few reasons for why this is.
Well, I think it's really a reminder again, because you're right. There's not a lot in this story that's particularly new, especially for anyone that's been tracking the Nigerian problem of power. And this has been a problem since our inception as a country. Essentially, what the article points to is that liquidity crunch is the biggest and most worrisome challenge that's facing Nigeria's power sector. So essentially, what they're saying is they aren't able to get enough money in to continue doing the good work they're supposed to do. So put in this perspective, according to the article, the country's current operational capacity stands at less than 4,000 megawatts. That's less than the 8,400 megawatt projection for the 2018 multi-year tariff order privatization target, which was 11,879 megawatts by 2012, and the post-privatization target of 14,200 and 18 megawatts, and of course 40,000 megawatts by 2020 is what we're supposed to be hitting. So you can see that we're woefully behind. Now, essentially what they're saying is that the pricing structure is non-cost reflective, and the solution that's being offered, which has come up again and again, but people don't like hearing that we're going to have to pay more money, is they're saying, well, a possible solution is to supply 50% of the distributable electricity to Nigerian companies at a cost reflective rate, and that the remaining 50% can then be shared amongst residential consumers. So essentially they're saying that we assume the average charge of 18 naira per kilowatt hour at 50% electricity supplied to industries 24/7, while the other consumer categories could maintain the MYTO tariff charges. So I mean, it's a tough one. The discos have issues with moving on their money. So liquidity crunch in the system, I guess, is really where we're at. Will people agree to have the tariffs increase? And outside of increasing the tariffs, a lot of people still don't have prepaid meters,
yes.
and that in itself is an issue, because we know what happens when your bill is posted after the fact. So yeah, unfortunately it's the same sort of story coming back over and over again.
I think we took a poll on the show once where we asked people, if you are guaranteed of good service, would you mind paying more? A number of people said they didn't mind. Just give us the service.
I mean, all you need to do is factor in the extra spend you already have on diesel and petrol.
I mean, we say this, but can I also point out, I know earlier this morning Business Express, they were referring to talking about how Nigerians in general are sort of like tax averse, and I think that also does apply to several bills, because as much as we can sit here in this room and say, well, we've spoken to some people and some people be happy to pay, there are a number of people who are very unhappy to pay that amount. A number of people that will say
after
no.
the show, I'm going to pay NEPA
Because
bill.
the truth is, we know that it cannot be 100% guaranteed at any point right now. It can't be, but we still have to pay more if we want the possibility of that happening.
And think about it this way. See how I just randomly said NEPA bill? I'm still, I mean...
You're still stuck in that
still
era.
stuck in that
A
era.
lot of us are
because
stuck
then it
there.
was better than what it is now.
I still say up NEPA.
No. My experience was not better.
It wasn't.
No.
You can go. I mean, you can go off grid. That's an option.
And
So
so,
we're off grid half the time.
Dalvin from Yaba asks a question. Guys, please, does visa on arrival to Nigeria cover particular countries or all countries? For information, you can actually go to the immigration.gov.ng website /VOA new. Eligibility includes frequently traveled business persons of international repute, executives of multinational companies from around the world, members of government delegations, and of course all citizens of all African countries. So these are the people covered. So essentially,
it's business. It's
money.
business. It's
if
not
you
tourism.
can bring money into the country, then it's you can get visa on arrival.
Oh, okay. Vanguard newspaper has this story. Malaria kills 95,844 in Nigeria annually. And that's a statistic or a number that's given by the National Malaria Elimination Program Director. The national coordinator, his name is Dr. Audu Bala Mohammed. He disclosed this at the forum yesterday. But Justin, please take us through this story.
Okay, so Dr. Mohammed reels off some interesting statistics. But the thing with statistics is you can wield them like a two-edged sword, right? They cut both ways. So, because if you look at the surface of it, he said malaria kills an estimated 95,000 Nigerians and infects 57 million annually. He goes on to say that Nigeria accounts for 53% of malaria cases in West Africa. So this is where my comment about stats comes in. So population-wise, what percent of the whole West African population does Nigeria represent in the first instance? So it's very easy for Nigeria to be a major factor in looking at the total stats. So I would have appreciated if he put it more in that context, than just saying Nigeria contributes 53%. Of course, we are the largest country in West Africa, so we would, but I mean, the substance of what's being said here is that over time, over the past 10 years, from 2010, I think, that the rate has come down. So it used to be about 145,000 people killed annually, but it's come down to 95,000. And they are saying that Nigeria requires an additional $551 million in intervention resources. Consider that to mean aid. Aid from multilateral intervention in agencies, the World Bank, the African Development Bank, the Islamic Development Bank, and all of that being contributed to fight malaria. Now, I would think that for something so crucial, for something so close to our health and well-being, we wouldn't be dependent on aid, right? And this is one of the biggest problems I have with how governance is conducted in Africa. We depend on outsiders. We depend on benevolence for things that are critical to our survival, things that are critical to our future as a people. And this crop of African leaders hasn't gotten off that dependency on aid. Why? Because aid is one of the largest corrupt industries in the world. The aid industry is one of the most corrupt in the world. There's a lot of slush funds, there's a lot of diversion. You remember some scandal back in the years about the UN food program and the son of a very top UN diplomat who's late now. There's a lot of slush funds in the whole aid business. So it benefits those who purport to be donors and those who purport to be holding brief on our behalf to receive the aid to get into that place and do what they do. But the problem of malaria remains. There's no reason why we shouldn't have funded research now for malaria vaccines to exist. There's no reason why I mean, everybody in this room has malaria. If any of us goes for a test now, malaria is part of us.
I'm cool, bro.
Have you ever gone for a test and they told you you're malaria free?
Yes.
Yeah, it's just a question of how many ticks you have.
It's a spectrum, yes. That's my point. It's a spectrum. It's always there, but it's just how many is like the battery life on your phone, right? How many bars do you have, right? So when you get to 5 bars, then you fall ill. So,
if perhaps our universities were in better states, because we don't have any funded research really that seems to be coming out of this country, and it's a big shame. And I remember that a couple of years ago we also did a story on that, just looking at how little sort of our universities are contributing in general to research and development in the country and across the African continent.
Yeah,
that's absolutely true.
So this is the same thing that's happening in revenue sharing. You know, so instead of funding research, instead of taking something that has serious implications on health seriously and funding for it, we're depending on aid. So when people control such things, they control more bigger issues that affect you.
But can I just say that for the Nigerians, please, can we, whenever you feel unwell, can you please go to the hospital and be checked out? Just do that. That's something that we have control over. You can go, you can get it checked out. Can we please stop spreading this statement to say, guys, just malaria. It's only small malaria. No, it's not only. We've seen the stats, we've seen the numbers. It is a big killer and it's responsible for a lot of deaths. So please take it seriously.
Thank you very
Alex
much.
F. London says, in a country where malaria still kills people that much, then what will HIV do? What will Ebola do? What will the other ones do? God, when? I pray one day we'll wake up and Nigeria will be great again. God bless Nigeria.
Let's recall that
Amen to that.
2020 budget has the federal government estimated that each Nigerian needs 2,000 naira. That's for health. Anyway, Sanwo-Olu implores Lagosians to own, protect state projects. He said this at the commissioning of a structure, the 31 strategic roads in Ojokoro local council area. Folu, please take us through this.
You know, funny, I sort of like the story because tongue in cheek, it reminds me a little bit of Stalin's regime. Report on your neighbors. That's essentially what they're saying. And in one sense, it does make a lot of sense. The governor has asked residents to monitor one another to ensure that no one uses the roads as parking lots, mechanic workshops, or deposits refuse in the drainage. Now, I know when we see this, every time Nigerians are implored to do their part, like, no, you have not done your own. But the truth and the reality is, we're the ones who are best in the position to police our neighborhoods and to police what's going on, and to say, well, this should happen or this shouldn't happen. And I do agree with that. I think we do have to start standing up for our neighborhoods, for our infrastructure, for places where we are. How often do we see street lamps that may be working one day and the next day the wires have been removed? People are using it for soldering iron in places. It happens, and I understand necessity is the mother of the creativity.
The guardrails on bridges.
The guardrails are all gone because people are taking it out, and
Manhole
sometimes
covers.
we see the crimes and actions and we just turn a blind eye, like, oh, no concern me, I beg. Government fix government property, but that's yours. This is the same infrastructure. So these are things that we need. So I think it makes sense. Whether Nigerians are going to heed that advice, I don't know, but I do implore others, just look out for yourselves in your neighborhood. That's the best you can do.
Yes, thank you very much, and it will save us costs, really. That's if we actually take maintenance, very important. Now, the Punch newspaper reports the minister canvasses adoption of open data initiative. I read the story, I think of how many files we have in the cabinet, those that are rotten right now. But it said it involves transforming a collection of stored data into single reusable resource by turning into structured, actionable information. Sounds a lot of grammar, but what does this imply?
Essentially, they're saying that our information has been collected by several agencies, several government agencies across the spectrum, and really it just needs to be collated into one spot. A number of people are being asked right now to go out and register again for the national identity number, and we've already done all up. I know I've like fingerprinted all 10 fingers for my voter's card. That happened. Remember that voting registration? It was painful. Computer would die out. We've done it for BVN. There's so we've done it for our passports. We have so many agencies that have so much information that all of this needs to be collated at one spot. The other thing as well that I think would be interesting is when they now provide the open data platform, how much access will the average Nigerian have to that data? What are the data protection laws that are going to be in place? This is time to ask our lawmakers to sit down and do very, very important work, because this is long-term work, and it's going to define how we future generations are going to operate. Because right now everything is digital, everything is data, and truly in Nigeria we don't have any laws to protect our information. So which is why also with even the telephone companies, we receive unsolicited text messages, we receive very targeted marketing, because our data is being sold, it's being moved from place to place, and there's nothing that's really happening to protect Nigerian citizens. So open data initiative, great idea on paper, needs to happen, because truly that's where the world is moving, but we need more protection in place for the average Nigerian. It's really, really important, because otherwise we will all be caught out in the cold.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that. We wrap up with just one last message. Ayo Mairo says, what avenue is the Lagos State government providing to report these things? So if people decide to set up mechanic workshops on the road. Please.
All right. Well, I think most people know what their local government council office is, or maybe you don't know. So sorry. Which means you have not been going to register for your national identity number. If you had to register, you would know. But we do have, local.
I believe there should be dedicated
councillors. We have government offices. You can really just call.
Well, how many of us know our local government councillors?
I know my local.
Not the council, but I know the office.
Oh, okay.
Office.
I know where to go and shout. I've had to cue him so for a while.
Thank you, Follow Storms. Follow Storms is the handle on Twitter. Justin is at Justin EJ. Next is the Grapevine 981.
The headlines. The story.